and all three of us do see them finishing in the top four. Somesh's gut says that they might even go on to win the tournament. If that happens, it would be quite something, because both the two new teams in the first two seasons would have won a title each, and the fans of Bangalore, Delhi, and Punjab would have a lot more to be sad about. But anyway, talking about one of those teams, and the next team is amongst them is Delhi, who have had their fair share of being close, but yet so far in the tournament. You look at the 2009 season, you look at the 2012 season, you look at the 2019, 2020, and 2021 season. 2020 they were in the finals. 2021 they finished the league at the top of the table, but rarely couldn't reach the finals. So they've had their hits and misses. And last season as well, they were just one game away from reaching the playoffs. Some might even say that they were probably one DRS referral away, but let's not go there, because it's something which is going to touch a nerve or two amongst the Delhi fans. But anyway, to coming to both of you on a serious note, how big of an impact is Rishabh Pant's injury, and do you think this side looks better than last time, or do you think they're probably weaker than last time?
For me, the impact is huge for a number of reasons. Firstly, is the fact that he's kind of I look at him as the heartbeat of this team. Someone who, even at a young age, obviously has been captain, and is a precocious talent, and someone who I have high expectations for as a player. I just it's just such a shame that he's going to be missing this tournament. The other issues is that they were low on keeping options prior to anything happening, and the implications of that is that if you play Phil Salt as an overseas keeper, then you're looking at a very, very right-hander heavy top six. Whereas if you play, I think they've been trying to upskill Sarfraz Khan and Manish Pandey to be potential keeping options. Then if one of them is at least somewhat competent behind the stumps, you might want to play Riley Rousseau as another left-hander. So there's a lot to debate in terms of what he brings with the bat, but also with the gloves, and how that balances the team up with the left-right combos and stuff as well. So it's no doubt a big miss.
So I think to answer that Pant question, had he been in the side, he would have been my one player that they could not afford to lose, because this is essentially a team of top order batters, and he, like Dan said, not only is a proper middle order player, although we all want him to bat in the top order anyway, but he's taken up that difficult job of batting in the middle order. Lefty, highly experienced, highly talented, is a wicket keeper as well. So I mean, losing him is massive. Yeah, and I mean, those of you watching, we've actually done a piece wherein we have analyzed that what Pant's unavailability means for Delhi, and there are 7 different scenarios on how they can plug the gap, and none of them are perfect. So this is the size of the gap he leaves.
I do feel that although there is no player, or there is no way, like you mentioned in that in that article that has been done, that there are 7 different combinations, and you don't still fill up the gap left by someone like Rishabh Pant. I do feel that Delhi would have prepared better in the auctions, because this is not the first time that they've lost Pant to injury. In the 2020 tournament, when Pant was injured, they had to play Alex Carey, which meant that even Shimron Hetmeyer had to be dropped. Now there is no out and out Indian wicketkeeper either. The possibility is that someone like Sarfaraz Khan keeps, and then you structure the team around him. But it is also not ideal, because he's not a wicketkeeper either. He's not a full-time wicketkeeper either. So I do think that they could have prepared a little better at the auctions. I also think that having 9 players who can bat in the top 3, out of which 4 of them are overseas, which is half of your overseas quota, is something that you really can't be doing. because I looked at it. There's Warner, there's Marsh, there's Phil Salt, and there's Rasu. All of them are essentially top three players. And to add on to it, there's Prithvi Shaw, there's Yash Dhul, there is Sarfaraz, there is Pant. So there's Manish Pandey. 9 players who were in the top three. So there's obviously a huge issue I see in the middle order, and I think the only way Delhi can fill up those gaps is probably have Marsh and Powell bat at 5 and 6, or maybe if I don't see Marsh being dropped, and I don't see Powell being dropped either. Have Marsh and Powell bat at 5 and 6. Have maybe Sarfaraz at 4, and then maybe a Yash Dhul at 3, or maybe a Manish Pandey at 3, to try and elongate the batting lineup. Because if Marsh and Powell are at 5 and 6, then Akshar Patel is at number 7, unless you bat Akshar Patel at 6, which means Marsh is at 3, 4 is Sarfaraz Khan, and 5 is Powell. Then at 7 you are left with again Lalit Yadav, Ripal Patel, Aman Khan. Your batting again finishes at number 6, and it has been a feature of Delhi over the last 4 seasons, and we saw that even in the women's tournament, the batting was ending at number 6. So how they plug this gap of batting in the middle order is going to be very essential and very deterministic of how far they go in the tournament, as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm. I knew whenever we'll talk about Delhi, it'll be all we'll need is one monologue from Gurkirat. But I think Gurkirat, based on your 11, Dan does not agree because he has Salt in his 11. Maybe we can have the graphic of Dan's Delhi 11, and Dan can explain what he thinks.
I mean, it's not perfect at all by any way, in any way, shape, or form. Look, I've got no idea. So just to clarify on the graphic, it would be Salt as the keeper, not Sarfraz. So that's the thing. I've got him as the only real kind of noted keeper. That means that you have to make a decision between Rodman Powell and Mitchell Marsh, because I think the Warner obviously is captain, and Norkia as the leader of the pace attack kind of pit themselves as the other two overseas choices. So there's a lot of combos that have now really been making it a lot more difficult to pick, say, a Marsh and a Powell in the same team. Now that Pant's injury has that kind of impact on those type of combos. And as Gurkrat mentioned as well, the batting stops pretty quickly. And there's not really a great deal of options to change that. And I think what we have to also remember is that in this team, Manish Pandey has now had a number of pretty mediocre seasons in this tournament. And Sarfraz Khan, if he does keep, which I think looks likely based on sort of the messaging coming out of into the media, is that he only played 6 games last season. He's never really had a full tournament where he's been a regular and played really, really well. So that's a big challenge for him and for Delhi, I think, to kind of integrate, and then that integrate those 2 players into their group, which they kind of I feel like they have to do now because of the injury to Pant.
So two questions that immediately strike my mind when I see this graphic, and maybe we can just take this graphic out of the screen now. Number one is, let's forget about the keeping for a bit. Let's assume that Sarfaraz can be pretty handy with the gloves and won't impact Delhi side in a negative manner. As a pure batter, who would you rather pick, Salt or Mitchell Marsh?
So they play completely different roles. Salt, more of a top order batter who with high intent. Marsh can bat sort of. You primarily want Mitchell Marsh to face pace, but I would look at him as a sort of more of a competition with Rodman Powell in that respect, rather than a competition with Phil Salt. The question for Mitchell Marsh's utility greatly grows if he's able to bowl decent amount of overs. Physically, that's not always been the case with him, and I think that devalues his quality or usefulness, I should say, in T20 teams. And this is the other problem as well, is that in that 11 that I suggested, and I don't think that there's many combos which really change this, is that there are really only 5 bowlers. Because I don't see Rodman Powell as even an occasional bowler at this level. I just don't see it. So where is their sixth bowler? And even if they play Marsh, maybe he's not fit to bowl much. So it doesn't really change a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying, that uh, unless if they need a sixth bowler in the 11, they'll either have to use the impact player, or they play one of Ripal Patel, Lalit Yadav, or Aman Khan, who I at this point of time, who I don't think either solve your bowling problem or or solve your batting problem. So that's a issue with them. And what you mentioned about Phil Salt keeping, I don't see Ponting keeping Marsh out, especially not after how Marsh batted in that series versus India. And yeah, I don't see that happening. I see that Marsh will be playing, and what Delhi will probably try and do is maybe use a Vicky Oswal or a Praveen Dubey, or one of the Indian left armers that they have, or one of the Indian paces, because they have Ishant, they have Mukesh, they have Chetan Sakaria who's there. So maybe they use one of those bowlers to strengthen the bowling lineup, probably when they're bowling second. But yeah, the problem is that there isn't a lot of flexibility that the Delhi 11 can have, because they don't have a lot of options, and their impact player options are not going to solve their batting as well. I mean, they don't have good enough batters to bat at number 7. And the only good thing for them is that Akshar Patel has really become a very good batter from last season, and in that last 1 year. So maybe he can be someone who's used as a floater to come in at number 4 and hit left arm spin and leg spin. I suppose that might happen, because otherwise it's just or because if they don't play Riley Russell, there's only Warner at the top, who's a left-hander, or Akshar Patel at 6 or 7, who's a left-hander. So there are obvious issues with this lineup.
So, which brings me to my second question. Now, Delhi were the side with the best run rate last season, and they were essentially bashing pace left, right, and center, which is pretty obvious in a team of Warner, Shaw, and Mitchell Marsh. Now, Dan, you have Manish Pandey at number 4. They clearly, there is an option of them actually promoting Aksar to counter spin and maybe have Manish Pandey as an impact player to arrest a collapse in the top order if needed. Because what we've seen of Manish Pandey over the years is that he's better utilized as an opener or max 3. 4 is a little too down for him. So don't you think that's a better approach, and then maybe they can have a Lalit Yadav as an off spinner in the team to as one more matchup bowler?
That would give them some form of bowling options in terms of the sixth bowler. But when Lalit Yadav last season struck at 110, I don't see him really as a hitter. Just generally, as not just from last season's numbers, but just on a more general basis as well. So if you're batting Akshar Patel at number 4, and then you have like maybe Sarfraz at 5, Marsh at 6 or something like that, and then Lalit at 7, it still doesn't look great to me. And yeah, maybe you're manufacturing a little bit more bowling options into your team, but for me, I think it creates as many problems as it solves.
Well, on the flip side, Delhi are one side who might have only 5 bowling options, but they're very top options, right? I mean, there are hardly any gaps. I mean, they just tend to cover all facets of the game.
Yeah.
You have Enric Nokia, who's high pace. Khalil had an excellent last season. Plus, he's the left-hander, change of pace. Kuldeep has been on an upward curve in his career. Akshar Patel might not have picked as many wickets as Delhi would have liked, but then we all know his potential. And there is Chetan Sakaria, who is pretty decent with the new ball. So at least from folks who support Delhi Capitals, they can take heart from the fact that unlike a lot of other teams, there is a very solid core of bowling.
Yeah, but it's also a lot to ask 5 bowlers to play 14 matches in a row all together as the same unit. That's the other thing. I mean, where's the backup? Yeah, you're looking at domestically. You're looking at sort of Mukesh Kumar or Kamesh Nagakoti as a domestic pace backup. Vicky Oswald did well inside Mushtaq. Maybe he can come in and if there was an injury to somebody, but again, that creates more problems. Say if he came in for Akshar Patel was injured. That's more problems as well with the batting. So, yeah, if they can stay fit, that will be the key.
Who's the one player who you think who you think is extremely important for them in this season, without which that whatever little chance that they have of making the top four goes for a toss?
I mean, I could think of 5 players probably that I would say that for, and I think that's the critical thing with this team. They're going to need 4 or 5 players to really step up and cover a lot of gaps. I look at Akshar Patel as the indispensable player in this team. Improved the batting, as I think we mentioned earlier, and obviously a frontline bowler as well. Without him, the balance of this team is a big problem, huge problem. And I just think that he's kind of like the linchpin which you can build this team around.
Do you think he could have been the captain in place of David Warner, maybe, given how Warner's towards the end of his career has not had the kind of run you would want, and an overseas player being a captain is a risk that we have discussed earlier as well. So do you think that Akshar Patel as a captain should have been a possibility that Delhi could have looked at?
Yeah, I do, because I'm not a massive fan of the Warner captaincy pick. One, we've already spoken about in previous shows about the risks that you're taking with an overseas captain. Also, we've seen recently Warner has been injured in Test cricket. He's been struggling a lot in over the last 6 months or so, and he's 36. You don't tend to get any better at the age of 36. And what I worry about a little bit here is almost a similar situation to what we saw with Owen Morgan in 2021 at Kolkata. Is you kind of like picking a player because they're captain rather than there's a worry that you're picking them as captain rather than because they're scoring enough runs. And if Warner starts the season in slow fashion, they kind of have to stick with him, and that's tricky. And especially as they've got no other real top order left-handers apart from Rousseau, who I don't think any of us really expect to play that at least from the start. That's tough too.
Yeah, I just think that if they'd not made Warner captain, then the possibility of giving games to someone like a Rousseau or a Salt were a lot more than what they are right now.
Yeah, agree with
Somesh, who do you think is the one player which is indispensable to their squad right now?
I agree with Dan. I mean, Akshar Patel was my pick as well. It's fairly obvious he balances the team. If not for him, the batting lineup would end at 5, not even 6. Plus, I mean, like I said, he's not maybe picking as many wickets as the team would have wanted in the middle overs, but at least there is potential. And I mean, I see Akshar as not an all-phase bowler, but he's someone who can, on assisting wickets and against a team like, say, Bangalore, he can even bowl in the power play. So
He
a
did.
highly utility player. Yeah.
In one of the games, he actually bowled in the super over in 2021 in Chennai,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
and he did quite well. So
Hmm.
I think Akshar's the obvious answer. But going back to the first statement that Dan gave, that there are 4 or 5 players who could be very crucial because there's an obvious lack of balance in the 11 given the options. I think if Delhi need to have a chance to make it to the last 4, they'll need someone like Mitch Marsh to score 500 runs and last the season. Because at this point of time, I don't think Delhi have uh, enough enough ammunition in the lower batting order at 5, 6, 7 to make up, or probably to score 50, 60 runs in the last 5 overs. So what they'd essentially need is always maybe one of Warner or Mitch Marsh to be batting till that point and then explode. Uh, I do feel that given the form that Mitchell Marsh is in, he's more likely to be that player rather than David Warner. So I, I think someone like Mitch Marsh needs to have a season of 500 runs or so for Delhi to qualify for the last 4. Do you guys see them qualifying for the last 4?
From my perspective, I think they've got a chance. I think it would be a lot easier to see them route to top four with a fully fit Rishabh Pant, obviously. But I look at them and I think they're not the worst team by any stretch of the imagination. I look at them as a potential top 6 team. I think that there's a number of teams who you would say could come anywhere between sort of 3rd and 6th, and I think that I would put Delhi in that bracket.
I think for me as well, they're not the obvious top 4 pick, but I think they're not as bad as a few of you Delhi fans make everyone believe that they are. Specifically on the bowling front, I mean, having a very good, solid 5 bowling options is a very is an advantage. We've spoken about Rajasthan, we've spoken about Lucknow, we've spoken about Hyderabad, and we have said that maybe bowling is a department where there are a few gaps, which I don't see with Delhi. So that's a big plus. A lot will depend on Warner because, I mean, Warner, the captain, is a different beast, though obviously not in a very politically correct sense of way at times, but I am a fan of the ruthlessness that he brings to the table. Plus, we've seen in the past, and there is no data that can gauge this, but adversity sort of bring teams close sometimes. I know the same case can be made about Kolkata, but they have far too many gaps for even the adversity to bring them together. But with Delhi, maybe you never know. I mean, they can, if not qualify, maybe just be a win away from qualifying, which probably be a little more heartbreaking for someone like Gurkirat, who wants them to have a really bad season so that there can be a change in management.
I think the one thing that you can say about them is if those 5 bowlers stay fit, they've got the opportunity to at least be a bowling strong team, and bowling strong teams tend not to do that badly in T20 leagues.